Welcome to Katha. It is an institute for academic and research excellence. We are apolitical, pure academic, non-governmental organization dedicated to unbiased knowledge and research. Our focus is on fostering intellectual growth through rigorous research and critical thinking. With a commitment to neutrality, we provide a vibrant platform for collaboration and the exchange of ideas. Join us in a mission to promote academic excellence and contribute to the advancement of knowledge. Good evening, everyone. Today, it is my privilege to introduce our luminary in the realm of finance and academia, Dr. Sakshi Sharma ma'am. Starting with a BSc honors from Punjab University, Dr. Sharma climbed the zenith of educational excellence with her PhD in finance from the Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi. Mentored by Professor Pankaj Sinha sir, her research focused on the pivotal aspect of market valuation and risk assessment in Indian banks. Dr. Sharma holds an illustrious career enlightening young minds at reputed institutions, including Jawaharlal Nehru University and University of Delhi. Beyond her professional landscape, Dr. Sharma is deeply invested in social initiatives targeting rural women entrepreneurship and uplifting small-scale farmers. A lover of music and a seeker of tranquility through yoga and spiritual readings, Dr. Sharma embodies a rich, multidimensional personality. As we wait today's enriching discourse, let's warmly welcome a true beacon of knowledge and inspiration, Dr. Sakshi Sharma ma'am. I welcome you, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to talk about sustainable finance today and how we can make the capital that we invest, how can we make that matter. In the talk, I'm going to talk a bit about, and I'll begin about the climate change, how there have been governance failures globally that have pushed us to come up with this concept and whole new theory of sustainable finance. I'll touch a bit about what you mean by ESG, how globally it is measured, and some of the key actors who are there within this whole area or whole purview of sustainable finance. And then, of course, I would like to end with the ESG and the sustainable finance Indian perspective. It's a new area that has been that is emerging these days. And I'm sure it's a good area for research, both empirical as well as qualitative research. So let me start with my presentation. I hope my screen is visible. So we'll talk about that there is no plan B because there is no planet B. So these are some of the famous lines of former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. And let me begin with some of these visuals of the 2011 Thailand floods. And in one of the leading newspapers of Thailand in 2011, one of the activists had mentioned that we have harmed the nature, so the nature has taken its revenge. And these were massive floods in Thailand that took away nearly 800 lives, and the losses went up. The whole losses in the textile industry went up to millions and millions of dollars. This is the Hurricane Katrina that happened in 2006. This was mainly due to, of course, the extreme harsh weather and monsoon conditions that prevailed there at the time. However, these are hurricanes that, the damage of which could have been avoided if government would have taken the action at the right time. It's a similar Hurricane Sandy that occurred in 2009 in the west coast of America. And that again was a result of massive harm that we have done to the nature. Now, if you look at what is really common among them, definitely it's the one of the reason being is the government inaction. And just to get those short-term results, we were taking decisions or we were not taking decisions. And we just ignored the long-term needs that our society has at large. Now, these are examples of where, globally there have been massive, there have been massive problems specifically where we've harmed the nature. But let's talk about how the corporate world deals with these issues. Now, if we look at the corporate numbers and some of the major corporate scandals, and if we see them, and we can actually find out that in a lot of cases, um, mainly what has happened is that we put too much faith in the short-term earning numbers just to produce explosive earning numbers or to produce explosive share prices. Many times, corporate leaders or people who are there at the top management, they just want those short-term results, and they have led to biggest corporate failures. Now, these are examples. For example, if you look at Scott Sullivan of WorldCom, he was awarded the Best CFO Award in 1998. A year later, or a couple of years later, his company WorldCom filed for Chapter 11 of bankruptcy. The 1999 CFO Excellence Award was given to Andrew Fastow, who was Enron CFO. And you know what had happened with Enron. Just a year later, a huge scandal unfolded. And what happened with Enron's shares is it depleted in value, and the investors lost huge amount of money. So these are examples where the corporate leaders have just seen short-term, have just focused on short-term results and not long-term as a whole. And that has also made the system more fragile. Now, coming to some of the personal decisions that we take. Again, this is an example where a dentist, Thomas McFarlane, dumped medical waste into a stream nearby his clinic. And a couple of months later, when the kids were vacationing in a beach close by, this whole bag full of dumped medical waste was found. Now, what all of this brings us to is the fact that we've all focused until a long time. We've all focused just on the short-term gains and completely ignored what the long-term gains in the future are going to be. So this is where the whole concept of sustainability came up. And so, I'll not really go into the definition, but it's just that we have compromised the ability to have, to act more responsibility in the current, so that we could get the future generations to meet their targets, more clearly. So it's that we have almost ignored the needs of the future generations. Now it is based on, and it is built on three main pillars: the economic, environmental, and social. And informally, they are actually referred to as the people, planets, and profits. So economic, environmental, and social is in the context of sustainability, but informally we all say it's people, planets, and profits. So we of course want to integrate people, planet, but also want to integrate it with profits. Now, what are the risks that this whole that our irregularities and our carelessness has given us? Now, I would like to classify these risks into three forms. One is, of course, a physical risk, which comes with the with what we just saw, like for instance, storms, hurricanes, floods, and we've also seen this very prevalent it is in our country these days. So droughts and wildfires. And the other comes in the form of transition risk. Now, transition risks they're more structural. For instance, it could be like, for instance, we have disruptions, and there could be rise of certain newer forms of, leading our lives. For example, rise of electric vehicles, and having more and more sustainable products, greener products, a move towards banning plastic. So all of these things are structural or disruptions. The other kind of risk comes in from policy. For instance, there are new policies that are developed, Particularly in the case globally, we've had this Paris Agreement that came up evidently after all these scams and all these these physical risks started coming in. And then, of course, there are legal issues and legal risks, because in many cases, it might be possible that legal battles might start coming up, and the companies do have to face, and you have to really push in a lot of, or give in a lot of money specifically to fight the legal battles. If they're not sustainable. Now, this is a look at the global average temperature, and if you look at this temperature, this average temperature and how it has moved through the years, we somehow see that this trend, correlates with the industrialization. And closely, when the industrialization started to happen, there was this evident rise in the global average temperatures. And practically, if you also see that through the years, there also has been a very volatile trend in these average temperatures. So it's been either too high or it's been either too low. So this is one thing that I wanted you to also see. Now, why organizations and particularly why corporates need to think about sustainability? So the first definitely is that does it also lead to any profit? Does it lead to increase in share price? Does it build brand reputation? Is there any reduction in losses that we might get? And then so these are questions that organizations are asking. So is it leading to any financial performance? And so I just want, in the next couple of slides, want to show you how some of these needs and some of these objectives of organizations are met uh, through sustainability. Now, sustainability definitely becomes a very, very key risk management tool. A part of becomes a very important risk management tool. For instance, let me give you an example of Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola in 2004 clearly faced a lot of water shortage, and it forced it to shut down one of its plants in 2004. And since that, because it knew that it's a raw material that's just available freely, and they had been using it very inefficiently, so they made ways and they integrated ways of how they could use water more efficiently in their plants. And just look at what happens when one of the plants of such a big company closes down. There are losses that go into millions and thousands and crores of rupees. So that was the same thing that Coca-Cola also faced. And since then, it's working on to ensure that there is a sustainability of local water sources wherever it's operating, and therefore it's become a very important part of its risk management tool. The other example is the example where a big company like Nike has been innovating and has been innovating continuously, and it's been investing in um, in sustainability to drive innovation as well. For instance, they redesign their products just to meet the newer needs of these environmental conscious people and sustainability conscious people. For instance, if you look at Nike, it has this Flyknit line, which uses a very different kind of a yarn system. And this whole yarn system reduces the waste by 80%. Now, it has actually reduced clearly by now 3.5 million pounds of waste globally, and it's just a fully transitioned yarn from recycled polyester. So these are examples of how so being sustainable also has pushed them to become more innovative. And then, for instance, cold water detergents coming up. So these are all example of innovation built or integrated with sustainability. Then coming to building customer loyalty. So does this also build customer loyalty was another question or another thing that was asked by a lot of corporates. And if you look at statistics, which also depict that, consumers have now, they now want to consume, more sustainable products, and they want to, they feel a need to consume less to preserve the environment for the future generations. So this is a data which shows that from 2019 to 2021, there has definitely been a shift globally in the acceptance of sustainable products all over the world. Now coming to the most important part, which is about the profits. Now there has been a lot of academic research on this topic, whether being sustainable also leads to greater financial performance or better profits. And there have been certain studies which I would like to quote. Definitely that out of the 200 studies that so there are studies that have done this, try to test this relationship. And the academic literature on sustainability and corporate performance has found that 90% of the 200 studies that were analyzed, they conclude that good sustainability standards, they do lower the cost of capital. And we all know, being finance students, that if the cost of capital is lower, definitely the cost overall is going to be lower and the profits are going to be higher. Uh, your better sustainable practices can lead to better operational performance, and better sustainable practices have also led to better stock price performance. So even the shareholders are quite happy with your good sustainability practices. So we see a very increasing and a positive correlation between being sustainable and having good or having an improved stock price performance, right? So our whole fundamental of shareholder wealth maximization also gets fulfilled with a lot being, or trying to be, or trying to follow sustainable practices. Um, so just I want to throw a bit of light towards one of the biggest externality that we all are facing these days, and that is the climate change. And that's the biggest thing. And even the corporations really now, and even the financial institutions now are taking charge of this biggest externality. So when we talk about being sustainable, where exactly do we have to focus our funds on? What and how do we exactly have to become sustainable? So if you see, a lot of financial institutions are also taking into this account this bigger externality of climate change and then making their decisions. So if they have to probably fund an institution or a company or an organization, they would probably also see how well it is managing its climate change. So now when we come to sustainable finance, it practically involves the interrelation of these three major things. One is the environmental, the second is social, and the three is governance. So our whole financial decision making process is built around these three major pillars, which we also call as ESG. Okay. So what do we have to do? We have to really strike a balance. What should our financial strategy be? So, if we try to seek profit and we are into this profit seeking behavior, then where is that balance for us? Our financial strategy should be that it is a midway between both profit seeking and sustainability management. Now, so a new concept has started to evolve, and this concept is, of course, related to sustainable finance or sustainable investments as well. And this is definitely also called as green finance or climate finance or ethical investments. So all these are, built around this whole area of sustainable finance only. So whether it is green finance or whether it's ethical investment or whether it's climate finance or sustainable finance, they're all stemming from this main fundamental of sustainable finance only. All right. So this is how the sustainable finance has evolved through the years. So in 1980s and 1990s, somewhere between that time, the whole concept of CSR started coming up. There was, there was a more reliance on um, on working on social issues and on environmental issues. And of course, there was smaller conventions that started coming up. It was only in it was only mainly after the Paris Agreement in 2015 on climate change and the sustainable goals in 2015, when this whole system of sustainable finance and sustainability garnered worldwide attention. Since then, there were instances of where green bonds had come up, where certain PRIs or principle for responsible investments had come up. However, there was still reluctance on the part of organizations to accept them globally. That's only after 2015 when it really garnered a lot of attention. Now, as I said, your sustainable finance really involves or comes around these three major things, that's environmental, social, and governance. And our environmental is, as I said, is the biggest externality that we have, and that is the thing that we really need to manage. Now, under the environmental, we, three main, only two main things fall, and one, of course, is the climate change mitigation. The other is climate change adaptation. Now, for certain, organizations, it's not really completely possible to, to change their processes. So somehow they have to adapt, or they have to make or mend their ways in a manner that they adapt to this climate change. And there are organizations that even try to mitigate the effect of climate change, maybe switching from high carbon to low carbon footprints, and so on. All right. Now let us see how, what are the initiatives and what is the focus that comes specifically under the climate change mitigation and adaptation. When we talk about mitigation, it really focuses on initiative that reduces greenhouse emissions. For instances, renewable energy, having more greener buildings, clean sources of transportation, forest preservation. They're all mitigating activities. And when we talk about climate change adaptation, the focus mainly is to adapt larger economies and societies to this change, which is not, which is inevitable, which is of course bound to happen. However, let's try and mitigate it and try to adapt it in a manner so that the effect is not as much. For instance, building newer urban infrastructure, having agriculture techniques which are climate resilient. All right. So these are some of the focus areas under climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation. And then, of course, there are other environmental issues like, for instance, biodiversity conservation, pollution prevention, etc. Um, this, of course, are some of the social foundations that also build around sustainability, which I'd just like to skip. These are Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Just a bit about Paris Agreement that came up in 2015 that I just also mentioned in the previous slides, that this was a landmark international accord and it was adopted in 2015. And since then, it has actually aimed to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions globally. All right, so let's come to what is the role of financial organizations in mitigating this whole impact of climate. Because what the argument usually is that, of course, being sustainable is leading to profits and everything, but how this whole financial system develops so that more and more sustainable products and some more and more sustainable practices get a push. All right, so there are three practical ways of how this can happen through the financial system. One, of course, is the capital and investment. Uh, you know, if just as I mentioned, like for instance, if we talk about how capital can exert a pressure, definitely you can provide capital to to organizations which are responding better to social and environmental challenges. You can support government's efforts to build more and more socially and environmental sustainable economy. So, these are ways of how even providing capital can exert a positive influence, and that also has a ripple effect. So, if you're providing capital for a more sustainable product, or if you're providing capital for a company which is socially or environmentally more responsive, then of course it's going to exert a very positive influence. Uh, then there are and through the years, even certain companies across the financial sector have committed to sustainability. For instance, funding, of course, has happened through which is a positive impact. Then, a lot of management through the years have happened that, for instance, disclosure of environmental and social risks that they're exposed to, and even getting collaborating with other environmental or even social initiatives, developing new financial instruments, for instance, green bonds, which are basically issued for greener projects, and even calling out to government for to take further action. So these are how even companies through the years have have responded. Now, what are the significant barriers, particularly to this whole progress? One, of course, is the emphasis on short-term financial performance over long-term sustainability considerations. Most of these organizations would ultimately look for profits as well. So, if there isn't any profit that's really coming from this whole sustainability talk, then of course the company cannot take this for longer run. So of course there need to be a consensus of whether they are going to focus on how much time do they have for a short-term performance or for a long-term, or how much time do they have so that they can wait for a long-term benefit to really come. And of course, there are weak regulatory frameworks. Sometimes, certain companies may also, certain industries may also face a lack of demand from customers and clients. Okay, so very quickly on, why would financial system stakeholders would really care about sustainable development efforts? Because so we all know, there is a demand for customers globally, demands of customers globally that they want to consume more sustainable products. And of course, the challenges that we have discussed are now global. So everyone knows about these challenges and they want to act more sustainably. Um, okay, so this we have just spoken about how this whole ESG issue can be incorporated. Very quickly about this whole sustainable finance market. Now, so the whole sustainable finance market is, just like a normal financial system, is built around the capital seekers and the investors. Now, capital seekers are issuers like companies, like even the municipalities, the governments, the international organizations, the banks. And then you have investors like banks and even bigger pension funds, houses, and asset managers. They are the ones who are providing the capital. And of course, you have the financial intermediaries that connect both of them. So, just like a normal financial system, the organization of this whole finance market is sustainable finance market is exactly the same. And then, of course, you have the stock exchanges, which, of course, act as intermediaries or maybe places where the investors and capital seekers can come together. Then you have regulators and policymakers and reviewers. Their main work is to adapt or to set guidelines and to see whether companies or organizations are meeting their targets, or certain external reviewers who may constantly monitor, right? So, right. So, for instance, if you look at stock exchanges, there are certain listing of securities in certain specific sustainable segments these days. We have ESG specific stocks, and there are specific indices that are now being developed for sustainable financial products also. So then it becomes a bit easier for investors also to find and invest in sustainability aligned companies and products. Right. And then, of course, as I told you, the role of policymakers and external reviewers. Um, so I believe this is just the time that we all now focus on being sustainable and try to see the profits that it brings in the long run and just not focus on the short run. So in the end, I just like to mention that it was said that you cannot really touch the financial system because it's so sacred, and some of the environment, some of the seasoned climate and financial regulators said this when there was a whole designing of sustainable finance system was happening, and some even said that it's just foolish to try to integrate sustainability with profits. But I think this has evolved at last, and most of the investors, the financial system, we as consumers, we are all ready to grab this concept and this talk around sustainability and around environmental, social, and governance today. So we are all, open to accepting the organizations which are going a mile further to take their, ESG initiatives a bit further. So let us all, try and not look at the short-run profits or short-term damages, but let's try and look at the profits it's going to create in the long run. So that's all.
Thank you very much, ma'am. As we come to the end of this enriching session, it is my privilege to extend a vote of thanks to all of those who have contributed to the success of this event. First and foremost, we express our deepest gratitude to Dr. Sakshi Sharma ma'am for gracing us with her presence and sharing her invaluable knowledge and insights garnered over a prolific career in the academic and financial sector. Dr. Sharma, thank you for being with us today. We extend our heartfelt thanks to our esteemed audience who have joined us today. Thank you very much.